So therefore, only bringing law is not sufficient. Just changing the mindset of the society to implement, accept lady with respect, with dignity, with equal status is very, very important. It may be in judiciary, it may be in politics, it may be in police. पुलिस स्टेशन में जाओ, लड़की रेप का मैटर लेके जाएगी तो नीचे से ऊपर तक देखेंगे, अच्छा हो सकता है क्या इसी की कुछ होगी, ये टाइम पे गई तो रेप नहीं होगा तो क्या, ये कपड़े पहनेंगी तो क्या. So we always tell police, आपका काम not to question the woman, only to see that laws are implemented and they are protected. And lastly, as I said, that the time is very limited. I don't know how much time I was supposed to speak, but in I think more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say that in short, what is women empowerment? I have done my best to give you this. Empowerment of women is very, very important. In India, things are changing. And women are getting their equal rights, but there is a big process and big challenges are ahead. But we are hopeful. Let us be positive that men and women work together for women empowerment. And nothing like आप आपका काम करो हम हमारा करते, nothing. We have to work together. And many men are coming forward. That's a very good sign. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nirmala. We'll take the questions at the end of the sessions. Now, can I questions at the end of the session, please?
End of the session.
Yeah, once. Can I request Ms. Lata Krishnamurthy, advocate and activist? She's practicing in Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. You see, I have a bone to pick first with the word itself, empowerment. It's almost like, somebody is conferring something on us. But really speaking, a woman's equal status and dignity are her birthrights. From the time she's born with these rights. And in fact, if you see, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights of 1948 doesn't say it's conferring any rights on it. It says, whereas the peoples of the United Nations have in charter reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, have determined to promote. And then again, if you see Article 1, it says all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. So therefore, this is something, it's only an acknowledgement of what is already yours. So what all these women's rights movements have been doing since all these last 250 years has been to reclaim something that is theirs rightfully, for which they have been fighting, because somewhere along the line, because of oppression, because of the, women's, they are equal with the men when it comes to the forehead, but in the forearms they are not. So the physical, differences are there, which has resulted in, exploitation, discrimination, and exclusion from governance and most of the other public spaces, which are otherwise a place which she should occupy as an equal partner. Now, again, the Constitution of India, you'll see in the preamble, talks about dignity. It talks about equality and dignity. Now, together, they would constitute, I suppose, what I think is a misnomer and which is being called empowerment. And I agree with this American public figure, who is a comedian, a writer, media personality. She has said, the thing women have to learn, yet to learn, is nobody gives you power. You just take it. So therefore, this power is ours, and we have to assume it's ours. Now, the Constitution of India has, again, our constitution makers in 1950, when they made the Constitution, the United Nations Charter was already in existence, and we have acknowledged that these rights are inalienable, and they are our birthright, and they've said dignity, fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. So dignity is most important, and then equal status. Now, there are provisions in the Constitution. Nirmala ji has fleetingly, sort of referred to them. There's Article 14, which talks about equality. 15, there's 15.3 in the Constitution of India. For those of you who are not familiar with the Indian Constitution, Article 15.3 gives the government, the state, powers to make special provisions for women to make sure that they have better representation in public service. And public service only, not in political stakes or not in the legislatures, but in public service and in public sector undertakings, whatever is governed or controlled are run with the finance of the government of India and the state governments. And then we have 16, which ensures, equal opportunities in public employment. Now, there is another article which is not really a fundamental right, but you find in the Directive Principles of State Policy. Now, Directive Principles of State Policy is found in Part 4 of the Indian Constitution. Now, these are not enforceable rights. These are rights which are there for the governance of the state to determine policy. Now, there you will see there's an Article 39A which says equal work for equal pay. Now, this doesn't have to be stated at all there because it's already implicit in Article 16, which says equal opportunities of work. So work means working conditions should also be equal. So it was not necessary to put it in the Directive Principles of State Policy. It's already subsumed, if you ask me, in the Equality Clause, about which there is some talk even in the preamble, and there are specific provisions of the Constitution. Now, the equality provision, I'm sorry, has only been given a lip service because, you see, they kept quiet till almost 1993. In April 93, for the first time, they brought in an amendment. To do what? To say that with effect from April 1993 onwards, when the amendment came into force, there will be one-third of the representatives in the panchayat elections. Panchayat is the local unit, which is the most close to the people at the grassroots level when the elections take place. It's like your district elections, or I don't know what to compare it with your countries, but it's like a much smaller division of the state. So local self-government is what they say. So only one-third of the seats have been reserved for women. Then if you see the municipal corporations and municipal elections, again, one-third of the seats have been brought in. This came after 2 months. So it took them a 73rd and a 74th amendment to kind of give effect to, I wouldn't say giving effect, but pretending to give effect to the equality clause. In fact, it should have been 50%. It would have been perfectly in consonance with the preamble of the Constitution as well as the equality clause to have given 50% reservation to women in both the panchayats and the municipal corporations, which they did not do. Very reluctantly, we had to wrest it out of their hands. And we got one-third of the seats in the panchayat and municipal corporation. So far as state and central government, central legislatures are concerned, I'm afraid there is no such reservation, and women are terribly underrepresented, almost have no visibility at all in the matter of lawmaking. So this is so far as equality is concerned. Now the other aspect I want to deal with, that is dignity, because you have given us very little time. I don't know how much I can do, so I'll come back to some of the points if necessary later. But let me first go with the word dignity. Now, the word dignity, as I showed you, finds mention in the preamble itself. I read it out to you, where it says, in the preamble, individual dignity. If you see the preamble of the Indian Constitution, the word dignity finds mention. Now, the word dignity is very, very basic. It's more fundamental than any other fundamental right, because that is something that you cannot strip any human being of. And the dignity finds mention in the preamble of the Constitution. I read it out to you that it's there in the Human Rights Declaration as well as in Article 1, and then as well as the Universal Declaration of Human, as well as in the Civil and Political Rights, which says clearly in the preamble, considering that in accordance with the principles proclaimed in the Charter of the United Nations, recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. So really speaking, this is something that is almost assumed by all international, covenants, and which was ours, which has been wrested out of us. And therefore, the endeavor today is not empowerment but it is to get back what is yours and what has always been yours. To get it back, we are now struggling. And there has been a very half-hearted attempt by the legislature under tremendous pressure to yield a little ground, but it hasn't really matured into full-fledged equality. Now, when we come to dignity, the one, social practice that actually strikes at the very root of dignity is the system of dowry system. Now that was, it's not unique to India. It was something, that phenomenon was there as dowry in all Western countries as well. I'm not talking about America, but many of the European countries and Southeast Asian countries. The concept of dowry was there. But in India, as well as in the Western countries, the idea was to compensate the girl who didn't get property rights, especially in an agrarian society, to have something that was her from the father's and from her parents' side. So which was given to her as a gift, given to her. That's the key word. It was never given to the groom's family. It was given to her as her property. And in India, it had a special, Sanskrit term, which was called the Sridhana property. So dowry was given to a woman because until 1956, women didn't have property rights. They could only have life estates. So they never could enjoy a property as a full owner. So they could not sell it, for instance. So the widow lived in the property, but without enjoying the rights to alienate the property. So after the Constitution came into existence, to give effect to the Equality Clause, they brought up the Hindu law of succession was enacted, and for the first time, women were given full-fledged rights to property. Now, even here, they reserved something called, I'm talking about Hindu marriages because the system of dowry is more specific to Hindu families than Hindu religion than many other religions. So, even after the 1956 amendment, there was a reservation. So far as property is joint, a woman doesn't get right automatically upon birth the way man did. It was called a co-partnership property. At the minute, every birth of a male child reduced the shares of the other male heirs, and every death increased the male share of the males. So it was something that only the men could get up by just mere accident of birth. Women did not have this right until 2005, and again it was a very hard-won battle when women really had to take it up as a huge public issue, and then through courts we were able to get the right by which the legislature amended the Hindu Succession Act and introduced the right of women to become co-partners. So that happened only as late as in 2005. Now let's go back to this horrible practice, the most reprehensible practice of dowry. Whereas in other countries, the minute that, the system of agrarian, concept, where the girls married and left the home, where the sons continued to till the land and, sort of grow crop and, increase the estate of the parents. And when they legitimately felt that we have contributed to enhancing this property values, and therefore we are entitled to it as a legacy from the parents after their death, that concept fell into disuse in all other countries because the Industrial Revolution and many other reasons. But in India, it continued because of social acceptance of that humiliating practice against the women. Now, if you see, in 1961, the act was passed. It is almost 50 years old, over 50 years old, since the act came into existence. There's a specific section in that which says that demand of dowry is wrong, giving and taking of dowry is wrong, and any person, including the parents of the girl, are supposed to report it to an officer called the Dowry Prohibition Officer, who came into existence much later and who always remains quite invisible. Nobody knows where he is. His ways are very mysterious. No way you can really go and report anything to him. He's totally unavailable. So he's there, but not that any parents will go and report it, because they want this marriage at all costs. They want this marriage at all costs because a female child is considered as a burden. In fact, one of the judges of the Supreme Court has taken notice of this fact, that how this evil of dowry leads to other consequential evils. Now, let me read a judgment of the Supreme Court of India, which is 2013 4 SCC page 1, and I quote, "Indian society's discrimination towards female child still exists due to various reasons, which has its roots in the social behavior and prejudices against the female child, and due to the evils of the dowry system still prevailing in the society." I want to pause here for a minute. So they've really said all prejudices and discrimination against the female child is only because of the dowry system, main reason. In spite of its prohibition under the Dowry Prohibition Act, the decline in the female child ratio all over the country leads to an irresistible conclusion that the practice of eliminating female fetus by the use of prenatal diagnostic techniques is widely prevalent in this country. So then, to get over this consequential evil, they passed another legislation, which of course is being also very, very, it's only followed in its breach, because most affluent couple go and get this done. And I'm sorry to say, this is not only amongst the uneducated people that all this discrimination against the female child prevails. It is also amidst the extremely so-called educated and elite members of the society. Now, let me give you the name of that act. It's called the Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostics Techniques Act of 1994. This is of 1994. And yet, there is alarming statistics of female feticide as well as female infanticide. As soon as the child is born, they kind of get rid of the baby.
Yeah.
So the numbers are alarming, and it is clearly because from birth, the female child, the minute a female child is born, what looms in front of the parents is that she is going to be a huge liability, because at the time of her marriage, we'll have to provide for her dowry. Because they are going to provide for the dowry, her nutrition is less. If there's a limited amount of nutrition, the male child gets everything, not the female child. And if there is an opportunity to send only one child to the school, the female child will always have to sacrifice her ambition to be educated. It's always the male child that goes to school. So clearly, they are trying to work out the arithmetic of it. They are saying that she's not going to bear the family name. She's going to go away somewhere else and bear somebody else's children. We are going to anyway pay her a dowry, so let's start cutting, corners even now.
Excuse me,
so they won't let her
I'm
have
sorry
the full potential.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're a little running out of time. So in the interest
I'm
of
sorry, I
time,
didn't take all that much time.
yes, I know. I mean, it's our fault. I mean, there is
I'm
little.
afraid I have to finish this thought. Please give
Sure,
me the
okay.
time. Since the chairperson hasn't objected and she's in charge, so let me say it. So let me finish saying this. No,